Guys, we have a video that I have found on Jay Foreman's channel that we can react to. I thought the reactions of Jay Foreman was over, but upon looking, this video from 2011 is still relevant today. This is a video called London's Unfinished Motorways. I believe we're going to have historical context. We're going to have infrastructure, city planning, and more conversational things about the transportational network of London. How since 2011, there's been a lot of decongestion laws put in place, whether it be taxes, whether it be incentivizing stuff like buses, cycling, walking more with the tube as well, the tube expansion. So remember, this video is from 2011, but let's react to it in a 2025 context. Lego.
If you've ever tried driving around London, you'll know what a nightmare it is. We Londoners spend longer sitting in traffic jams than anywhere else in the country, and most of us don't even enjoy it.
Well, that makes sense. London's the most populated place in the country.
In the 1960s, there were ambitious plans to completely transform London's roads, making jams like these a thing of the past. They made a start in some places, but, as you can see, they didn't finish.
That's like a private street with the cars on the left and right that are parked, and he probably has like a few people behind him that he knows. I know I'm spoiling the magic. There's no way he's actually doing this.
London was not designed for the car. In fact, it wasn't designed at all. It grew in gradual steps, with the Romans, Tudors, and Victorians all contributing their own streets, many of which remain today. It's these very same streets that we in the 21st century squeeze onto, trying to get about in our cars, buses, and lorries.
I mean, just look at that. That is insane.
Look at this. The quickest way to get from, say, Hampstead to Highbury is to go all the way down to Camden Town, through the complicated one-way system, all the way back up to Holloway and down Holloway Road, which takes ages. At peak time, the average speed for that journey is a pathetic 10 miles an hour. I can run that fast!
You might think, how can London go on with a road system as slow as this? Well, they were thinking about that as early as the 1940s. In 1944, a man called Patrick Abercrombie produced
There's no way that's Mark.
the County of London Plan.
Nah, that's not
Its
Mark.
aim to deal with the looming problem of congestion in London. London was taking a beating in the Blitz, so there was a great opportunity for rebuilding everything. Abercrombie saw it as a chance to give London a new road system fit for the 20th century. In central London, narrow Victorian streets would be bulldozed to make way for wide Paris-style boulevards, and for the suburbs, there'd be wide ring roads going in circles around the city.
Ring roads play a crucial role in modern town planning. Here to explain is transport expert Graham Rhodes.
Ring roads allow vehicles to travel from one side of town to the other without going through the busy middle.
It's kind of like an interstate or a highway.
So that's fewer traffic jams and faster journeys.
Patrick Abercrombie was really ahead of his time because the traffic wasn't so bad in the 40s. People didn't pay much attention to his rather ambitious plans until 20 years later.
By 1966, car ownership had skyrocketed. Everyone had a car, and everyone was causing traffic jams. Abercrombie was dead by now, but his
Jeez.
bold plans were just coming to life. Not only did the rebuilding of London's roads seem like a good idea, it was now essential.
The planners of the 60s liked Abercrombie's ring roads idea, but they wanted to take it quite literally to a new level. A new type of road that was futuristica than anything Abercrombie had ever seen, the motorway.
6 lanes, a central reservation and hard shoulder for safety,
Kind of like an interstate.
no speed limits back then. The first motorway to open in Britain was the M1, invented in 1959. In 1966, for the first time, motorways were going to be brought right to the heart of the capital.
The plan was to build 4 motorway ring roads in and around London.
Look at this. You can know how old the video is just by the UI of the Google Maps right there.
The name for the project was Ringways.
Ringway 1 was to form a motorway box around central London. Ringway 2 was further out, making a circle through the middle of the suburbs. Ringway 3 was further out still, roughly following the border of Greater London. And Ringway 4, way out in the countryside, was for traffic that wanted to avoid London altogether. Today, hardly any of it has been built.
And that was in 2011.
The plans were vast, ambitious, disruptive, expensive, and extremely unpopular. Only one complete circle was ever made, the M25.
By 1973, they'd made a good start on Ringway 3 up near Potter's Bar, and at the time it was called the M16. Bits of Ringway 4 were also starting to appear. But 2 years later, the Ringway scheme was officially cancelled. So instead, it was decided to connect up the bits of 3 and 4 that they'd built so far, making one complete loop. Finally, in 1986, the M25 was opened to the public by Margaret Thatcher.
Oh my god.
You can see evidence of them hastily stitching up the two routes today.
Up by South Mimms, the M25 famously splits in twain, leaving a big grassy gap in the middle. That's because it was designed as a couple of slip roads, and the rest of Ringway 3 was meant to go this way.
Today, the M25 has earned itself an infamous reputation in popular culture.
The M25.
It is the most congested motorway in the UK and is increasingly inadequate for...
That doesn't look that bad. However, this looks like early morning. So, I don't know. It's probably get really congested in peak times though.
the needs of London and the South East.
For example, people travelling from Brighton to Reading use this section of the N25. And people travelling from Croydon, trying to get their flight at Heathrow, use the same section of the N25. Busy, busy, busy.
All on its own, the M25 does a job that was meant to be taken on by 3 motorways. There's no alternative further out, and there's no real alternative further in.
The closest thing London has to a suburban ring road is made up of the North Circular and the South Circular. But they're not much good either.
The North Circular whizzes through the suburbs like a twat going, "Yeah, look at me, out of my way, I'm the North Circular, hey!" But it comes to an abrupt stop at the Woolwich Ferry.
And then, once south of the river, it has a complete change of character, going...
Oh, sorry, excuse me, do you mind if I... Oh,
Does it not have a connection point right there because of the boats in the East River conversation where, I mean, there's not much bridge. I think there's only like one bridge. There's not many bridges that far east that's not going to be drawbridge worthy. Is that why?
terribly sorry. Excuse me, could I just... Oh, sorry.
So how did we end up with only half of Ringway 2? In other words, why is North London better than South London?
The reason predates Ringways by several decades. The North Circular Road came about in the 30s when much of North London was still being developed, so there was loads of room to make it wide, fast and more or less future-proof. When the Ringway scheme came along in 1966, all it needed was a bit of widening here and there. Half the job done. The South Circular, on the other hand, was a different story altogether.
No wides.
The route it takes goes on streets that have been here for centuries. In fact, there isn't really such thing as the South Circular Road at all. It's just a series of scarcely believable road signs.
It was then, and still is now, totally inadequate as a ring road. But widening it was out of the question. To finish Ringway 2, they needed to build a completely new South Circular that was as much of a twat as the North. But to build a 20th century road...
What the heck is that?
...through 19th century suburbs, it was a case of ploughing
That
through
looks
whatever
real.
buildings were unlucky enough to be in the way. This nice street was on their hit list.
The best way to see the destruction the new road would have caused is to look from above. A total of 36,000 people in suburbs like Beckenham and Crystal Palace would have their homes exploded to make way for the new road. One look at this terrifying artist's impression and the planners decided it just wasn't worth it.
So Ringway 2 was cancelled and Outer London was spared. But in central London, traffic was at such a standstill that something had to be done. So in 1967, a small section of motorway was given the go-ahead.
London's Westway twists and turns from White City to Marylebone. Although technically not part of Ringways, it gives us a perfect view of what Ringway 1, the motorway box, would have looked like, and how it would have affected the surrounding area.
I wonder what was above me in Hammersmith. Because there's a road very similar to this, and it like glides like there's an overpass. Wonder what road that was.
It was the construction of the Westway that woke London up to the reality of what a city throttled by a motorway box would be like. Just like here in Notting Hill, many more parts of inner London would have a motorway like this blasted through the middle.
Yeah, like Hammersmith.
Including Kilburn, Camden, Canonbury, Brixton, and Battersea.
The locals were understandably not happy, and they protested.
Londoners took to the streets to oppose what they saw as the destruction of their city. And if that wasn't enough of a headache for the Greater London Council, the Treasury weren't happy about how much the Ringway scheme was going to cost.
There were some heated discussions at the time between the GLC and the Treasury as to who would finance the London.
This is a real person. Obviously, he's a real person. If this is a real like council member or like real interview, that's like the first time we've ever seen a person that's not an actor on a Jay Foreman video.
London Ringway scheme.
Uh-huh.
Ringway 1 was causing the most controversy as it was the most expensive per mile.
Really?
We estimated it would cost £2 billion. That's £18 billion in today's money.
That's very interesting.
But there was no public support, negative press, so the government decided it could not finance the London Ringway scheme.
A combination of protest, financial woes and political kerfuffle brought an end to Ringways 4, 3, 2 and 1. So what legacy remains of Ringways today?
Looking on a map, there are flecks of Ringway 4, which in some parts of Hertfordshire is confusingly called the North Orbital Road. The short and stubby West Cross route in Shepherd's Bush was planned as part of Ringway 1, and so was the East Cross route. Until the year 2000, these were both shown in blue as proper motorways on the map.
Also, when Ringways was cancelled, it had a knock-on effect, and lots of other road building projects were cancelled too, including some that they'd already started.
The M23 from Brighton stops at
The M25 is the one that they have today.
this mysterious unfinished junction just after the M25,
Yeah.
instead of Ringway 2, where they wanted it to finish. Here's another example, the M1, which stops at Staples Corner. You can see on Google Earth they left plenty of room at this junction for it to carry on further south, but without Ringway 1, there was nowhere for it to end. If built to plan, the M1 would have met Ringway 1 at West Hampstead at an enormous triple-layer junction, totally ruining
This landscape... really? Surely no one cares about this place.
That's fine.
It's tempting when you're in a traffic jam like this one to think about how useful those ringways would have been. But it's a complicated issue. There are pros and cons. Pro: the motorways would have taken traffic away from the surface streets. This road would be much nicer, quieter and safer if it weren't lumbered with the unenviable task of being the South Circular. Con: 60% of Londoners would have lived 2 miles away from a motorway. They would have been so ugly, so prominent and so everywhere that London would have become famous for them. Pro: with Ringways, East London would have got itself a new bridge at Woolwich. Much more convenient than this boat.
Con: the motorways would be physical boundaries, dividing up communities. Londoners would probably identify themselves by which ring roads they were stuck between.
Pro:
Surely it's not that bad.
they'd make journeys faster. Con: actually they wouldn't.
Studies have shown time after time that building new roads attracts more cars. Los Angeles is mostly highways, and the traffic jams there are worse than here. Had Ringways happened in London, it would have set the precedent that you're supposed to drive. The jams would continue, and Ringways would defeat their own purpose.
You have to admire the optimism and confidence they had back then. In the 60s, the word progress was a much simpler word.
More cars, taller buildings, wider roads, rebuild everything, more! Everything we do is amazing!
But today's approach is a softer, more cautious one. It's not that we're scared of progress. We're simply scared of cars.
Transport policy today is almost entirely about measures to reduce the number of drivers. The fact that London is such a crazy, improbable maze is possibly the best way to encourage people not to bother with the car and use public transport instead.
The lack of motorways has allowed areas like Camden to come to life. I think
Camden Market right there. Camden, and specifically Camden Market where you're seeing him, another one of those must-go places.
future generations trying to solve the transport problems of their time will be grateful for what the 20th century didn't do.
Literally right where he's at, I've been.
So it looks like for the foreseeable future, we'll have to sit in traffic jams no matter what. And if that's true, we might as well sit in our traffic jams and enjoy the view.
So, guys, I mean, this video is from 2011, but a lot of it still holds true. I unfortunately do not live well, I guess I fortunately do not live in a crowded metropolitan area. I live more or less in a rural area where driving is imperative to get to place. You don't have public transportation. We don't even have buses here. Walking's, we're gonna walk 10 miles. Biking, you're not gonna bike. Terrain, the length of time. There's no bike lanes. There's no trains, there's no metro, there's no anything where I'm at. So I can't really see through the same lens, even though I was in London for 10 days. And I'm just saying, public transportation, walking, bicycling, the alternate routes of getting to A to B versus a vehicle, it's just so convenient, especially when you have a city that's interconnected with connective tissue. And since it's 2025, this video is 14 years old. They've added congestion tax, more walkers, more tubes, more buses. It's already gotten a little bit more green, if you would say. Well, that's it. Jay Foreman, I'm looking at you. I need you to make some more videos so we can react to more in the future. If you guys have a video recommendation, put it down below. If you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out. Bye-bye.